Welcome to the Mark J. Ryan Experience with your host, Mark J. Ryan, mind-body expert with over 25 years experience in NLP, hypnosis, and coaching, taking you on the road to self-discovery, exploring different parts of yourself, including spirituality, the latest research into the brain and the mind, and how it can help you attain more of what you want, including wealth and money. Mark will be coaching you in the latest technologies of change, from interesting fields such as hypnosis, NLP, and brainwashing. You'll also learn how to improve your relationships and love life. Learn the newest techniques in sales and marketing to improve your income. You'll learn all this in an easy and fun way to understand using current events. Get ready to change your life for the better with the Mark J. Ryan Experience. Hey everybody, this is Mark J. Ryan and welcome back. Today I'm going to continue on and do a part 2 from the original part 1 conversation between myself and Obi. We had, quite frankly, an amazing response back on how it affected people, and they've listened to it multiple times. That's about an hour and a half conversation. And one of the people that did listen to it and got a lot out of it was Philip Salt from the UK. He wrote me an email with a bunch of questions on it, and basically they were the same type of questions I had gotten from other people, same type of compliments and suggestions. So I figured I would do a call with him. I like to answer questions not necessarily based on writing them out or talking in general. I like the back and forth between a question and answer format. So I had talked to Philip before and done some coaching with him, and he'd been on some other calls that I'd done. So I asked him if he'd want to do a short conversation. We figured about 30 minutes. It ended up being about an hour and 50 minutes altogether, edited it down to about an hour and 45 minutes. And I got to tell you, it's some of the best stuff I think I've done. It's my deepest and newest thoughts. I totally opened up and shared at a level of comfort that I don't think I have before. I took it nice and slow, completed my thoughts. Hopefully this one will change your life as much, if not more, than the first one did. And if you have any questions from the first call or the second question and answer call, which really got into a lot of teaching and coaching, feel free to write me. Write me and let me know. You can go to my website, Mark J. Ryan, and hit the contact form there. Ask me any questions, suggestions, whatever you'd like, and we'll keep doing this if you like it. Anyway, so here is the recording. Again, it's the question and answer part from the original phone call that I did with Obi, my friend Obi. And if you haven't listened to that yet, you can go on YouTube and find it, or I'll put a link up several places in this video that you can go and find it. Again, if you go to Mark J. Ryan and go to the sign-up page, or you go to the contact page, we'll get you that same information too. So enjoy the call. Take care. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. So we did a call in the past, and we did a coaching call.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Philip, and what got you to the point where you had listened to a call that I had sent out. What was it about the call that you liked? You sent a great email with a bunch of information and questions, and then I approached you and said, hey, why don't we just get together and talk about this on Skype, record it, and send it out there for the people. We had some other questions, but pretty well a question here or a question there, fairly easy to answer. And you had I believe about 3 pages worth of stuff. So I figured this is going to be a good call. So why don't you start from the beginning, how you found out about me a little bit, the email that you just got, the call that you listened to, and the questions that you had.
Sure, no worries. Well, I guess I picked you up from Joe Vitale and Dr. Len, and I've taken a few of your products, and I guess it really resonates with me, this stuff that you do. It's so authentic, and you're really, really generous. That's true.
Thank you.
There's not many people out there, experts, so-called experts and experts, who give their time as you do, and without charging these, exorbitant fees. So you're just it's just I don't know, easily approachable. The stuff you teach is really it comfortably floats into your mind, and it really makes an internal connection.
Well, I appreciate that. It's funny. I've heard the words approachable and generous seem to happen a lot. So
yeah,
it's nice to know what other people are thinking or what they're feeling, or it encourages me to keep going forward.
Oh yeah,
with what I have.
I guess we're reflecting something back to you, saying that your stuff is it's needed, it's valuable, it's different, it's original. It's not like copy and paste. It's original stuff that really I guess understands you for who you are. You're understanding the people you're talking to, not just giving them a load of copied and pasted stuff.
That's a great way of putting it, because that's when I'm doing this work, that's what I'm thinking. I think, okay, do I like to hear it? I remember talking to an ex-business partner, and he had done a product and asked me what I thought, and I said the information on it's fantastic, but the presentation I did not like at all. And he was kind of upset. He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it sounded like you were reading to me, and I didn't feel you in it at all. I didn't feel you engaged in it at all." And I say, I want to feel you. I want it to come, even if it takes longer or if it's not as perfect as it sounds when you're reading it for a product. I would much rather listen to you in real time as it comes out of you, and maybe even have some thought and say, "Hey, let me think about this for a little bit, and I'll get back to you at a later time, or maybe even in a few minutes. But let me think about that. How does it run through your system?" I was saying to him, "How does it run through your system?" And then come back up, not just in the words.
Yeah, definitely, because what you do hits you on several levels. It's not just the words; it's the emotion. It's the words you choose. It's the ideas. It's like I don't know. It's like a film, and it hits you in several ways. And you are in vertical alignment with everything you do say. Well, you can tell somebody is not real, authentic. I guess that word "authentic" keeps coming into my mind. So.
I appreciate it, Philip. What's your background, so people know a little bit about who you are?
So basically, I'm getting into therapy. I'm coming at it from a sort of I've been through all these emotions, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and I want to learn from them and put it back into the world.
Nice.
And like the last call, working through those eyes.
So you got the call. You've got a little bit of a background in therapy. You've got a little bit about hypnosis and NLP, and just it sounds like you've done a lot of work with yourself, on yourself, yes. And there's still issues there, like we all have. And I think, in a sense, we're how would I say it? Kindred spirits. That going through the process and clearing it up is such an exciting thing, and seeing and getting revelations that you want to share them with the world, and hopefully somebody that's younger or starting to go through it or may go through it has the information, and with that information of how you got through it is able to even bypass it, not even have to worry about coming out of it, but never even getting involved in it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not like a conceptual thing. Yeah, I get it intellectually, but it's got to be, I've been through this experience and I really understand it, not intellectually understand it. And again, you can tell the difference. There's a different energy.
On multiple levels.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you said, the vertical levels. How many vertical levels are you going to? Are you stopping it, or are you just completely opening up and letting it come in and go out on as many levels as it'll that will have you, in a sense, that will allow it to happen within you.
Yeah.
So, anyways, you got that background. You got a little bit of experience with my stuff, other people's stuff, and then I sent out a phone call that was a conversation from late summer, September sometime, I think it was, with a friend of mine, Obi, up on a mountain. I was getting ready to. I'd had some what I call downloads, and people say, Kathy says, explain what you mean by downloads, because sometimes people don't get it. And what it is it's kind of like a bunch of information comes in at one time, and it comes in and on all those vertical levels and thoughts and feelings, and then I have to go through a process of what I call unpacking. What was that just came in? I get a bunch of visual images that come in, feelings that go with it, and an awareness of like, wow, something big just came in, something shifted. And a lot of times when this happens to me, I'm usually going through a stage of frustration in my life. Mm-hmm. And when I was younger, I would get mad at the frustration, but I always noticed that the frustration led up to a certain point of kind of almost a quantum, for lack of a better word, a quantum leap or quantum jump into a new level of feeling and understanding and thoughts. So over the years, I started getting used to the idea that when frustration was coming, I might still feel frustrated and end up, getting involved with it and letting it overtake me. Yet there's this kind of a meta awareness that something is getting ready to come in. And usually when it gets really bad and I get really frustrated, I start to keep my eyes and ears and emotions open, because it's like, okay, I know from past experience where this has happened before, usually some kind of a shift in awareness and what I think and what I feel comes in. And that was happening on that phone call.
Yeah.
Or actually before the phone call. And as I was getting ready to turn the recorder on, literally had the recorder in my hand, getting ready to hit the play button, my friend Obi called.
Yeah. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing, because what's great about if I put it into the recorder, it goes in there. But with Obi will sometimes say something or challenge something or bring it in another direction or add a little bit more information, because we've had 6-hour or 8-hour conversations before, just hung out and talked for days. So we know a lot about where each other's at, and we allow each other and hold space for each other.
Yeah, that phrase, open, have space.
Hold space, yeah. Obi likes to say it. We got into it the other day. We were sitting and having a bagel and a coffee at a local shop, and we really got into what does that mean, the holding space, and I kind of got in and talked to him a little bit about it. But it's not doing the best to keep an open space and open thoughts and accept what the person is saying, where a lot of times what we're doing is we're preparing what we're going to say next, or what's the next thing or our spin on it, and how we're keeping an open space is to allow it to come in. If you do get a thought, maybe bring the thought up, but ask questions to find out more about it. Don't just presume that you know what it is. Hold the space, and it's almost as if it comes to the end of itself when it comes to the end of itself. But if you hold the space for it, sometimes it'll go on for a long period of time. The information, the unpacking of the download, so to speak, continues to come, and we flesh it out. And then there's usually a point where it's like, are we done? And it's like, yeah, we're done. And when it's kind of run its course for the day, and now it may come up again on the next day. So that call, what I was getting ready to record when Obi came on, I took full advantage and asked him if it was okay, and he said, yep. I said, can I record it? Yep. And we just went to town about it. And you're a little aware that you're recording it first, but we were aware. People are aware, but you get into it, and then you forget that it's even
you lose it. When you enter that space, is it a coming together of minds, and you're like a channel, and it like the download is occurring at the time, and you just go with what the conversation within the, if you like, the one mind you just back and forth like a tennis match. Oh, that's a good stroke. Knock it back.
Yeah, it is more like a tennis match as opposed to like a chess game.
Yes.
Where you're planning ahead. In a sense, like I'm just editing a video that I did with Kevin Hogan in Las Vegas, and I'm watching myself. And in the first hour, I was supposed to go on at a certain time in the afternoon, but all of a sudden, because somebody had to leave, they wanted to see me, so they said, "Could we put them on in the morning?" But we'd have to so I didn't have 3 continuous hours. I had an hour and then lunch and then coming back. And it really threw me off because it was that morning and so I had to go on fairly quickly. I wasn't even dressed yet, so I had to go change. But I had a bunch of stuff in my head that I knew I had to get out.
Yeah.
And I really, as I'm watching myself, I'm realizing I never really got into the flow of it because I had so much in there that I was planning to say.
Yes.
So that kind of clogged me up, so to speak. It didn't allow me to get in. I was more in my head.
Yes.
And I could tell I was breathing shallow and I was speaking fast instead of being able to, let the energy go down, feel my belly, feel my feet, feel my head, connect with the audience, connect with people in the audience, and slow it down and start speaking. I felt rushed, like I had to get so much information in the first hour in a different way now, because I wasn't going to go right into the second and third hour. There was an hour and a half, which they narrowed down to an hour for lunch, which if I'm anchoring a bunch of stuff with people, if I'm putting thoughts and ideas to prepare for hour 2 and 3, and I'm opening states of mind and I'm telling stories to get parts of the mind to open up, to be prepared for what I'm going to do next. And now you got lunch in between. That's a break state. And a lot of times the break state interferes with all the anchors. So I've got this going on in my head at the same time I'm trying to present of how I'm going to do this. And so that doesn't let me connect fully with the audience. It doesn't let me connect fully with myself. But on the call on the hill with Obi, that isn't there. There's just a space to say, I've got as long as you need. Okay, and I've got as long as you need. And to sit there and then, again, hold that space where we're not trying to get into proving a right or a wrong. This is good or bad or right or wrong. We want to know. We're more interested in all the information coming out without putting anything on it. Then we might have towards the end of it, come back and start talking and say, personally, how does that affect us? Do we believe it? Do we not believe it? But we kind of put that and push that aside and just say, you know what? When I do therapy with people, I can't go in and start putting my beliefs and meanings on what this person is saying. They'll know it. They'll feel it right away. So when I hold a space with them as I'm doing the therapy, as I'm doing coaching, what I'm allowing them to do is, without judgment, as best I can do, to hold an area and a space for them to fully express without judgment and without having to them to think about, how should I say this so he doesn't think I'm saying it funny or I'm weird or I've done something horrible. And they can feel it. They can feel that I'm holding that space, and they're allowed to just say what they need to say and feel what they need to feel. And I'm more interested in the process of what they're doing, how they're doing it, than judging the content of what they're saying.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Perfectly so. It's like you're taking off all the, ideas, concepts, breaks, and you're going into free flow. You just whatever comes through, and that's okay.
That's it. There is some downfalls to that. The positives are that it keeps you in the present, and you're able to be in the present as best as you can. And you start to learn, and I'll say, I say you start to learn, I start to learn, people listening start to learn, that what you thought you needed from your memories, from your past, from your preparation, of how you think a session should go. I remember I used to have all kinds of books around me, and I'd have notes, and I'd have, things prepared just in case, and how I thought it was going to go. And the more sessions I did with people, I found that just getting into a conversation and not planning it out, that it got around to what I wanted to do anyways. And so what I started doing was just going in saying, I know I've got the tools, I know I've got the skills, and if I hold that space, there's something magical about holding the space that it comes around, and the answer eventually comes out, or something that is the real issue is pinpointed, and you know what to do. And it's a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, it's like the little eyes of set it up, so it's got to be this way, it's got to be this color, it's got to take this time, but all those eyes are given over.
Yes.
Given over.
And for those people that may not have listened to the initial call, or just to reference back to it, when we're talking about eyes, we're talking about those parts of ourselves. We have say, okay, we're a certain person, we're this I, but I'm also a father, I'm also an editor, I'm also a husband, I'm also a neighbor, I'm also a resident of a certain town. So there's in all those different contexts, usually there's different value systems and behaviors and beliefs that go with that. But then we get into smaller belief systems. Well, I believe, I'm more conservative in this realm. I'm more liberal in this realm. And now we've got all kinds of belief systems and eyes. And those eyes like to defend themselves. And they like to come up with all kinds of great information to prove themselves right.
Yeah.
And so when you start to go into a conversation, or you start to reveal some personal information, there may be what we call the other eyes that are going, don't you dare say that. I better not say, what are people going to think? And so that's what we mean by those little eyes that are in there, these other little belief systems that have identities, the I, small I for the, as opposed to the big I, but all these little identities, these parts that are in there trying to, pull their weight, so to speak, and I don't mean pull their weight in like a job or work, but they want front and center stage. They believe egotistically, they're like little egos.
Yes.
They believe that they know what to do in this situation and how to run the show.
Yes.
But if you find out, most of the time, it may not be very accurate. And let's say after the fact, there's that pain in the ass eye, which I call it the Monday morning quarterback that goes, you should have done it this way, and you should have done.
Yeah.
And when I hear that eye go at it, they're like, yep, I probably should have done it. And I'm going, and where were you when this was all happening? Where were you then? And then it usually shuts up, it goes away, and you don't hear from it. So they're
yeah, you see it in football sometimes. There's two strikers playing up front, and the better known striker, he's waiting for the pass, and the other guy takes the shot and he misses, and then the expert says, okay, why didn't you pass to me? I knew better than you.
Yeah.
You wasted that shot. We lost the game, you idiot.
Yeah. Monday morning quarterbacking, what we call it here in the United States. All the quarterbacks that are the Monday morning saying what the guy that's in there under the pressure should have done. When the person did the best they could do with what they had in the context. Yeah. And if they could have done it a different way, they would have. But that's what practice is about. That's what learning is about, is to say, okay, this is what I think I should do. This is what I thought I should have done. But what are you really doing? And to learn to be okay with that and say, hey, this is where I'm at right now. I'd like to be further up the road. I'd like to be doing this a whole lot better. Yeah. But you know what? This is where I'm at right now. And if you get into the state of, I should be doing this, or I could be doing this better, you won't take the action.
No.
Because nobody likes to get beat up. Nobody likes to get called on it. So but if you get into a state of realizing that you can improve and you can get better, and it happens by holding a space for yourself.
Yes.
and saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm about ready to do something. I got to remember that, like children, we go back when we start to learn something. We're like kids again. We fall, we make mistakes. We don't do it right. We need lessons. We need teaching, and then we try it again, and we improve, and we improve, and we improve. But when we get to be adults,
Yes.
a lot of times we think that, oh, now I'm an adult, I should be able to learn faster.
Yep.
No, sorry, you still gonna, you may learn some things faster because you already have knowledge about it. But when you're trying something completely new, you have to go into like a childlike learning state.
Yes.
Because your body still learns in that way, and it usually takes a little bit of time and practice to do it. But we think, well, we know better because we're in our heads. And we're not holding space for our bodies and the capability of doing it. Does that make sense to you, Philip?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you used a phrase in that call, spiritual eyes. So you're looking at it, I think what you meant was looking at it from the spirit's eyes or the higher power or divine. And all those judgments melt, disappear.
Yeah, I've been talking about this again with Obi lately, and then I listened to a call last night from a teacher that I listened to, and he got into it a little bit. And we have to realize that all these eyes, whether it's our limbic system, the lower brain, or the mammalian brain, or the higher cortex, or let's take it a step further and go to, our higher consciousness or super consciousness, spirit, God, whatever you want to put on it, that all those different levels are different eyes, but they also have different value systems.
Yeah.
And with the different value systems, whereas the ego's value system is mainly protecting the body and surviving, and then you get into spiritual values. And a lot of times when something's in front of us, we've got to take care of it. Is a dog going to bite us? You got to you got to let your body do what it has to do. And if you yell and you scream or you get upset and you run or you freeze, whatever it is, you do the best you can with what that is. But when you're in, let's say, an argument with somebody that might be close to you or even not close to you, that's going to trigger as well. And you got a value system that triggers at that same time. And we have a tendency to go with it. And what a lot of this work is about, and that I do, and to me, is to say, people, I respond this way when X person does this. I respond this way, and I don't like it. And what's causing that? What happens with that? But also to identify resource states in other areas where you don't do that, or you could do a better job at it, or get in touch with spiritual eyes, with spiritual values, and say, how would you respond from that place?
Yes.
But you have to know how to wire this up in the brain, and you have to know how to first get those parts activated. Which parts to get activated? What's going to be a useful resource state for this person in considering what they're going through? And a lot of that comes from experience. You worked with a lot of people, or you've done it with yourself. Yeah. You start to know what resource states are, and you get in a similar vein with that person. And can you remember a time when that didn't happen? And you start to fire up that, warm it up, so to speak. On these cold days back in the East, everybody's, I got a friend, he's got a diesel truck, and it's so cold he has to plug it in, get an extension cord to plug it in to keep it warmed up. So when he goes to start the truck, the diesel's going to ignite. It's not going to get all gooey and not light up. And we got to do the same thing with our brain. So when we're talking to people, and they've got an issue, and everything is in the limbic system, the lower brain, the reptilian brain, that is stimulus response and has a tendency to be very selfish and look to fight, flight, or freeze. How do we now bring up different parts of ourselves, our eyes, our spiritual eyes? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, definitely. It's I think I had a bit of fear on Monday, and so you're stuck in that limbic brain. And I like the way you said about putting meanings on feelings. This means fear, so that means I'm going to shrink. Uh,
Yeah.
and where do these meanings come from? And really, is this what's going on? And then if you can, like going in an elevator, you go up into the top floor and you can see it from a different perspective. You can see it from a different light, if you like. There's light. You bring light into the situation, and now that meaning changes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
go on.
I was going to say what happens there, Philip, is we stop.
Yes.
We stop on a floor. We don't go to the top. We don't continue to move. We freeze.
Yes.
And in NLP, we nominalize. We start to nominalize things, which freezes it. And then we have a still picture instead of a motion picture, a moving motion picture. And so we keep circling that still picture and saying, well, this must mean this, and this meant this to me, instead of continuing on to say, and this is a great thing what coaching and therapy is about, is to say, what else is happening? What other meaning could that be?
Yes.
And a lot of people get stuck with that. It's like, no, that's it. That is the meaning, and I'm not moving off it, and I'm not. So now you've got to go into different eyes and different belief systems, say what's making them so stubborn about not wanting to loosen that up a little bit. And people dig their feet in and they plan they don't want to move, because a lot of times if they feel like if they do move or they do shift or do change or get a different perspective or consider even something else, that means death to them.
Yes.
But it's not death to them, it's death to that I.
Yes.
It's death to that part. And it's associated with the limbic system, which is 4-to-1 balanced on or stacked on the negative side. So if you see a tiger or something that looks like a tiger coming out of the woods, you're going to run. You're going to get it. You're going to do something to survive. It doesn't want you second guessing if this is, is this something good? No, you figure that out later when you get to a safe place. And so that basic schema, so to speak, of survival works on a tiny level too.
Yes.
The brain generalizes and says, well, if it works there, it'll work with this, and it'll work with this, and it'll work with this, including your emotions and your feelings. And, you might come out and find out that was a squirrel. It wasn't a lion.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your body is built, your brain is built, this part of you, this wonderful part for the survival. It's saying, look, we'll take 15 squirrels to one lion, but as long as you keep running, because that one lion is going to be the important one.
Yes.
And people socially, now let's flip that around socially. Socially, we're thinking, well, I can't look like that. I'm going to look like an idiot. Well, and so what? You're going to stand your ground, and then you're going to figure out most of the time it's squirrels, but you have heard there might be a lion around or a tiger, but they're all squirrels. And now, what would my mates think? And what would this? And next thing you know, here comes the real lion, the boy that cried wolf, so to speak, and you're not moving. So we're weighted to go towards the idea that it might be a lion, even though it was a squirrel. But socially, we look like fools and we look embarrassed. That's why people, when they want to learn new stuff, usually they got to go to a therapist or a coach or somebody that really knows what they're doing, because if they do it in front of other people, they're going to go, well, that was stupid. You fell on your ass. You looked really like an idiot when you did that. It was the first time I did it. So what? We got it on video now. It's on YouTube, and people say, well, I'm never going to do that again. So then they come up with the sense of and change means danger.
Yes.
And so now they got two conflicting things going on. The body says change means get your ass out of there and get away. You could be in danger, but you got a competing thing going on to say, well, the politically correct thing to do is stand here and look like I'm brave and be tougher than I really am, so it looks good to other people.
Yes.
So when you got all those conflicting eyes with the value systems behind it, that's why I continue to do coaching. And once you've cleared some of that and you realize, oh man, this is okay to do. This isn't socially bad. This isn't something that should be embarrassing. No, it's what most people do. And it's how our nervous system works, and we're taking into account this is how our nervous system works, how we think, and saying, okay, the social structure says one thing, my parents said another thing, the school says another thing, TV says this, all my mates that play football or soccer say this. So you've got all those competing contexts, all those competing values, all those competing eyes, and people get stuck a lot because they equalize. Equilibrium happens where they find this comfortable, safe spot, but then years later they're going like, well, it was comfortable and safe at first, but man, I got to get on with my life. I've got to do something different. I can't keep doing this. Okay, are you ready to go in and do some work and maybe fall down and maybe skin your knee a couple times and it's not going to feel great, but are you willing to get through that, get past that for the possibility of having something much better in your life?
Yeah.
And it's part of the sale. You're selling people too. This is a therapy, coaching. It's sales. You are selling those parts. You're selling those eyes. You're selling that person on the tools that you have for a certain amount of money, for a certain amount of time, you're going to help those people and apply those tools to help them get to the place they want to be from where they are now.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a tug of war between these eyes. Oh, let's go this way. Let's go that way. And we're only going to embarrass the eye, aren't we? We're not embarrassing ourselves. It's just the eye.
That's it. And until you, I use the example a lot. How do you get a dog to drop a bone? You got a bone, you're trying to put the dog is going to bite you. There's one way that you can really do it efficiently and easy, and that's to throw it a pork chop or a steak.
Yes.
It'll drop the bone in a second because you just gave it something better. So if you try to convince somebody to make the change, they're going to clamp down harder onto that bone.
Yes.
But first show them, and then maybe wave the pork chop or the steak in front of the nose and go, we've got something that could really be a lot better than that bone that you have in your mouth. People usually go, okay, yeah, let's give this a try. But a lot of times, you've got family members and friends and people say, well, why don't you just stop doing that? Why do you drink so much? Or why do you do this? Why don't you just stop? It's like, okay, yeah, why don't we just...
Enough.
Why don't? Well, because people don't know what to do. They don't have a strategy for it.
I'm not sure. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. You're not sure, and that's exactly it. But what people will do then is to start saying, well, I must be an asshole, or I must be an idiot. I must be boy, I'm stupid, just like my dad said. He was right when he... No, unless we have a strategy, we're not really good on coming up with that stuff. No. We'll sit there and spin over and over and over again because we have a tendency to go back into our memories and search for it.
Yes.
And if nobody ever taught us it, and we keep going back through our memories and searching for it, we're doing something that's not very good. And then we start to put meanings on it. Well, I've gone through it. I've been trying for years. It must be my genetics, or I must be a real idiot, or that was from what my mother did, or my father. Yep, and maybe it was. But it's a simple thing, is that you go to find somebody. When I was younger, I watched, do you ever watch The Three Stooges? Do you have that over there in the UK?
No, we don't.
Stooges, it's an American show, comedy back from the 1930s, and they're three stooges, and that's what they were, stooges, but really funny. And I remember one time they would go in and they would say, somebody'd say, well, this is wrong. And they'd go, well, we're electricians. We can fix that. We're plumbers. We can fix that water leak. And, next thing you know, they'd be in plumber's outfits and they'd have the plumber's box or the electrician's box. And we're here. We're going to fix it. These guys had no clue what they were doing. And next thing you know, like the one that came into my mind as we were talking was there's an episode where they were plumbers and there was a simple leak. And next thing you know, they started taking pipes apart and adding pipes and they all kinds of joints that were left joints and right and then T joints. And next thing you know, you go into the kitchen, it's out of the kitchen into the living room, and it's just a maze of pipes. Looks like a kid's playground, and water squirting out of it. And then they'll go, okay, we think we've got it fixed. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Well, that's what we do a lot of times. We think, well, I can fix this. I can make this better. I'll just stop drinking. I'll just stop eating. I'll just, make my daughter or my son or my husband or wife do this, then you go in there like you say, well, I'm going to be a plumber for a day, and you have no clue what you're doing. But if you go and take some classes and learn how to be a plumber, you can fix it. Or easier to say, you know what?
Not for me.
Why don't I just call a plumber?
Yeah.
One that's licensed and knows what they're doing. It not have to think about it. And it gets much easier. So people that have been trained, people that know what they're doing, that have the resources, have the strategies to help you, instead of going, well, this year I'm going to have we're in January right now, and we think of all the people that had the, New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do it this year. Okay, you got the energy, you got the willpower, but you're fighting a resistance of a lot of eyes that are stagnant, that don't want to move, and they're going to go, okay, let them try for a couple of weeks, and then we'll come in and back over again. Next thing you know, you're stuffed in your face, you're not eating, you're watching TV, and go, what happened? How did that happen? Well, your unconscious didn't have a strategy. You used your willpower for a little bit, but ultimately the unconscious is going to say, well, he's better off and he's safe and there's no lions attacking him while he's sitting there watching TV, drinking a beer, watching the game, no lions attacking him. So we can push it with willpower for a little bit and make it happen, but unless you have a strategy, unless you know how to go into the unconscious, talk to those parts, negotiate with those parts, help those parts negotiate, those eyes, negotiate and get an understanding of what it is. And a big part of that, Philip, is the allowance to let it happen. So many people are like, they've got this stubborn willpower type thing. I'll do it, and I'll do it on my own, and I'll do it in my own time. And those are just reasons and excuses and BS that you came up with because you didn't have a strategy and didn't know how to do it, and you didn't want to. Social pressure says, don't look stupid. Don't look like an idiot. Don't say I don't know. When you were a kid and your parents were talking to you and you said, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Give me a reason. Tell me why did you do this? Give me, and you go, oh, because I did this, and this. Okay, well, thanks. At least you gave me a reason. Well, it may not be
the right reason.
Go ahead.
It might not be the right reason.
It may not be the right reason, but you make it up. That cognitive stuff. When I tell, as another story, I tell people when I do hypnosis with folks, and in the past, do a trance, and then in the middle of the trance, have somebody take their shoes off, take their socks off, or take one shoe and one sock off. And then they go back into trance, and then, you go through the session, and then at the end of it, say, okay, it's time to leave. And they get up to leave, and at that point, they look down and they see one shoe and one sock is off. And they don't know how it necessarily got off. Now, they do know. And you ask them, what happened to your shoe and sock? Well, my foot was itching like crazy, and I decided to take it off. Well, it was sweating a little bit. I have a gout, and I needed to take it off. And they'll come up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. But if they weren't afraid of the social pressure, they might go, I really don't know. And my guess is, since you're a hypnotist, maybe you gave me a suggestion and I followed it. Yep, that's exactly it. But you'll never hear anybody say that. Why? Because that means they didn't have control. And they'd rather have control with a lie than the thought of no control. And that's cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is where you got a big gap between something you did and why you did it. And there's a part of your brain that will very quickly come up with that. I'm going to give you one more example of that. This is we've got Jay Leno and Jimmy Fallon, all the late night guys that come on late at night. We have I'm sure you probably have them over in the UK as well, right?
Yeah, we have the old Jay Leno. Yeah.
So he sends people out into the street the night before, the night before the State of the Union that Obama's given the other day. So, and they go up to these people with the microphone, and they're saying, what did you think of the State of the Union? People go, I thought it was fantastic. The Republicans were a little rough on them. They didn't applaud enough and everything. And then the people go, well, what do you think about him faking the heart attack like that? They go, wow, that was scary, wasn't it, when he did?
Well, this is the night before it happened. It hasn't even happened yet. It's the night before. But they go from one person to the next, and they all start answering as if they saw the State of the Union, which had not occurred yet. And then they feed stuff in there. Well, how about when he faked his heart attack up there? And people go, that was a scary thing. I wondered if it was real or not. And they just go on without it. They don't miss a beat. And why? Because it's more important to them to look good socially and culturally than look like somebody that doesn't know.
Yes.
And they'll lie for it. And those parts are really good at that. So now you got a bunch of that going on, and we have to get to a certain part or a point where we start to go what I call counterintuitive, which times when I'm doing work with people, I'll say, I need you to go counterintuitive to yourself. I need you to tell on yourself. I need you to tell me what you'd never say. I need you to do the opposite. Even though it's terrible to you. It's going to feel like your whole world's going to fall apart. But stop defending it. Stop defending it for a little bit. And actually, what happens if you go against it?
Yes. Step into vulnerability for a bit. And
step into vulnerability, but then see, that's the thing with vulnerability. Then we go back to meaning, what you started in the beginning of this. Vulnerability. What does that mean to people? And it's interpreting it. A lot of times it's me going, when I'm working with people, I'll go back and redefine things because I realize vulnerability to you, to me, to my daughter, to my wife, to my neighbors, to everybody, they all have different pictures, sounds, and feelings in their head that mean vulnerable.
Yeah.
None of them are the same. So how do we get a commonality and we start to define certain things? And vulnerability is something that we begin to define and say, what does vulnerability mean? Well, vulnerability, again, socially, you're vulnerable socially. You're going to look like a fool. You're going to look like an idiot. People are going to laugh at you. People are never going to talk to you again. They won't. It's usually negative vulnerability.
Yeah, let's stay safe.
They stay safe. We don't look at the aspect of how is it positively vulnerably safe?
Yes.
And the people never can say, wow, I never even considered that. Oh yeah, why isn't there a positive vulnerables? If you're in the hospital and you have doctors and nurses that are taking care of you, you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
But you're safe, vulnerable too, and you've got the best people, and they're there to help you in a moment's notice. And then you got your family that comes and sees you, so you're vulnerable, but you're safe, and it's a positive vulnerable because you're leaving yourself open for other people to help you with processes and strategies that they have to make you better that you don't have maybe for yourself at the time.
Yes. Yeah, it's like short-term safety versus long-term safety.
Yeah, and then you can add the time element into it. So there's lots of different variables, and each of us are triggered by that, the positive, the negative, short-term, long-term, combination of both. How do you, it doesn't have to be an either or, it can be both. It can be, how do you superimpose the pictures or map across the pictures of long-term and short-term together? So our brain is hardwired to think in certain ways. And, a lot of those ways come from the first 7 years of our life when we're kids, when we don't have critical thinking. This is just stuff that is automatic. It's kind of like with animals. We look and say they got instinct. Well, we've got a little bit of instinct, but it basically is a learned type of an instinct over the first 7 years. We're hardwiring that information in. So if anybody ever wants to read about that, Piaget and Hubinger have some really good stuff on childhood development. But a lot of times we get stuck because of trauma in certain ways of thinking. And one of the biggest ways of thinking is either or. So, and it's okay because you go like, oh, well, it could be long-term or short-term. And the answer to either or is and shades of gray. It could be both.
Yes.
And parts of, and sometimes alone, if somebody's really stuck in an either or dichotomy, you start bringing in the shades of gray and possibilities to get them past their reactance and their resistance, and it completely shifts them. Just adding the word and in there. And what else? as they start to consider other possibilities. That process goes there. And now what it does is it kind of like takes a grade school kid and puts him into college.
Yeah, it's like a link.
It's like a link.
Yeah.
It's linking skills of the brain together that weren't previously linked.
Yes.
So there's types of therapy and coaching is to link those parts that haven't been linked together. But sometimes it's just a matter of certain resources haven't been linked together. You haven't considered certain resources, and so we fire up certain parts of the brain that have those resources or the ability to create those resources, and then fire up the problem at the same time, and you start going back and forth, and it becomes an art. You learn the basics in NLP and doing eye movement integration and all the different modalities that I've learned over the years, and those give you the tools, but then it becomes an art, listening to the person, listening to the eyes, listening to the different belief systems of each one, and say, okay, now, how do I tune this up a little bit? What parts of the brain do I want to fire up right now? What resources? And then how do I start to connect them or anchor them into the problem state that is more powerful than the negative problem state that all of a sudden gives a shift where the person sees it in a different way and they get the aha, so to speak, like, oh, I get it now.
I see it.
From that,
Yeah.
From that new perspective and that new link, they can't see the problem the same way anymore. They can't feel the problem the same way anymore because it's moving again. They have moved, or it is moving, and they're seeing it from a different perspective. And excuse me, I know I interrupted you there, but what were you going to say?
No, I was just. It's like you, like you say, you leave something behind, you move to a new level, and it's no longer part of your definition of a problem.
I don't know if you in your therapy or you're working with people. One of the things that I was taught early on by John Overdurf, Julie Silverthorne, is really define the problem state, and it's really good to have them say it, and it's really good to have them even maybe write it down and say, so this is the problem state. Yes, that's it. Because as I work with people, you get you clear the problem state, and so quickly do they I'll put this in quotes, normalize. They'll go, well, no. Well, that's not really the problem. That's what you said, the problem. Well, yeah, but it doesn't seem like a problem anyway. They immediately go into what's next on the list. But you keep it and bring it back to what is the one thing. What is they come in for? What's going to be proof to them that once this is cleared, what will that be like, and how will they prove it to themselves? Because that happens a lot, where so quickly when this links back up, they go back again, quotes, normalized for them, that isn't a problem anymore. They can't even access it anymore. So the next problem in line pops in and goes, this is really the problem.
Yes. Yes, it reveals itself in a different way.
It reveals itself in a different way. But again, because if you shift it and you change it enough, they cannot go back and access it anymore. They can't get there. So when they can't get there, it's like, well, I guess that wasn't really a problem. Well, it was, but it's not now. But really consider what just happened there, that just a few minutes ago, that was a problem. You got a different perspective. You connected some things, some resources, maybe some different ways of processing information, and all of a sudden it's not a problem anymore. And people really need to kind of sit with that a little bit and meditate to the power of that, because once they start getting that and really let that soak in of what happened and how quickly that happened, that now your job as a coach going down the line becomes easier, because people start to recognize what it is and how quick it can happen, and the resistance begins to go away as well. They don't resist you as much. Oh. They're more to say, next time they might come in and go, I'm a little more anxious, and by the fifth or 10th time, they're saying, okay, here's the one we're working on today. I'm ready for it. We might get this done in 15 minutes. I got a golf appointment I got to get to. So let's work. Before they're like, this will never change. I'm here. I've had it for 20 years. But once they start getting into change and you start, Bandler used to talk about this years ago where people would say, the therapist that, where they take 2 years to cure a phobia, or they've got a client with a problem, from the DSM, they say, this is 6 years at so much a week. This will be my Mercedes payment. NLP comes in there and can knock something out that, you maybe took 6 months, 2 years is now doing it in 20 minutes. And, people would say, well, man, we've invested all this money, secondary gain. We've invested all this money and this time in college to learn these systems to make it take 2 years, and there's a certain amount of money that's going to come out of that 2-year period of time with this issue. Why would you possibly want to change that in 20 minutes?
It sort of brings up the idea of what's your intention? Do you want to earn the money or help the person?
Yeah, well, if the system is set up to be a stagnant system and say this is just the way it is, then it's going to be to help the person, but it's a 2-year I definitely want to help the person, but it's a 2-year process, and I'm going to make this much money in the meantime that I can plan on. But 20 minutes, well, geez, my intention to help the person isn't that great. What about the money? Know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that goes on all over the place. That's just, you think about pharmaceuticals and supplements.
I was just thinking that.
All that. But what did Bandler say? So what was his answer to it, which I think is brilliant? He says, you're going to find that people are going to want to keep coming and seeing you because there's more there. Yeah. Now that they know there's a possibility of getting better and improving at that quickness and at that speed and that depth. Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And I've been doing this stuff for well over 20 years, the hypnosis, since I was a kid. So, you're talking almost 30 years, and I am now more fine-tuning what I want and how I want to be. And I do self-coaching, but I have 3 other coaches that I call for different things to say, hey, look, John, I'm stuck with this. Can you help me out with that? It's funny because the three of the guys that I initially thought of, their name is John, so it works for all 3 of them. But to say we are on the precipice with this technology where the lower part of the brain, the reptilian part of the brain, and the mammalian part, the second part, there's 3. We have basically 3 brains, and then we have the cortex. But the first 2 parts of the brain are pretty well closed systems. They are not evolving, nor will they evolve. They are closed systems. They're going to keep doing what they're going to do. But the third part, the cortex, the higher part of the brain, is evolving, and it requires connection between people and communication in higher forms of thinking. So we're now just discovering with NLP and brain science how we can best start to optimize this evolving new part of our brain that makes us completely different than all other creatures on Earth. Maybe dolphins and whales or something like that, but still they don't have the arms and the legs. We're completely different. We have an evolving part of the brain. We are at a choice point. This is not something like with animals that have instinct. A baby dog is born with instinct. A baby squirrel is born with certain instincts, and they're going to be able to do it. They don't really need to be trained necessarily by the parents. We need to kind of be trained by the parents, and that's one of the reasons is that we have a part of the brain that is evolving, for lack of a better word, but is open to restructuring, and we can make that happen. And but it requires kind of like a cooperation between human beings. Yes. to make this happen and to grow. So I look at it and I say, hey, this is something that I can help other people with, but also myself. I'm really excited about to say we don't know the limits of that yet. We're exploring that. So yeah, let's get off of the limbic system. Let's get off of the mammalian brain. Let's get to the point where we have more access, where we can settle those parts of the brain down, and we can have more access to this new part of the discover what's possible for us. What can I do? How can I enjoy my life more? What can I get myself to do? And work with the resistance. And instead of making the resistance be something that's bad
Yes.
or not good socially or anything else like that, say, no, these things are put in there for really good reasons, and they kept me alive and they kept me safe. They didn't do it the most efficiently and effective way, but I'm here right now, thank God, and I have the ability now to start really exercising this higher thinking part of my brain. And the I stuff that we've been talking about really is on the cutting edge to find who are you and who are the different yous.
Yes.
Father, you're a man. You're, I'm an American, or you're British, or Irish, or Scottish, or whatever else. And then I'm a soccer player. I'm not. I'm a podcaster. I'm a video. All those I am. Those are I's. All those things you are. If you could start stepping back and out of them and not be so committed to them, where you're able to, step back and get new perspective, get a higher perspective and say, I'm also this. And what else am I that I haven't even considered yet that might change my life in such a dramatic way and make this experience here on Earth so much more exciting?
Yes, definitely. Those low to we've reached their limits, and what's going on in the economy at the moment, and fear and stuff. We have to move into a new level, and we're being forced to. Do you think we're being forced to? We haven't got any option but to change our thinking, to change, because you talked about environment in your call. We have to create the new environment by changing into a higher level of thinking.
Yeah, and I tell you, that's a great point. And when I look at TV, seldomly, but when I watch it and I watch commercials and I watch what they're doing in the movies, pretty well there isn't too much inspiration in movies and television right now.
Nope.
Everything they're doing, from a subliminal to a direct, obvious. It's not really obvious to a lot of people though, but it's really obvious to me that they're doing their best to keep us from entering into this new part of the brain. They are doing everything they can to keep us in a stimulus response place, because they're interested in making money by selling products. And when we have to sell a lot of products, which means to create artificial needs or to really amplify needs to make people buy, so people stay in business. And so that it's the system that we have. And I was thinking about this recently, Phil. Something occurred to me, and I started, okay, well, what if we set up a society where we said, how do we want to bring in new spiritual babies? Spirit is coming in here. Do we want to set them up in a lower brain slavery stimulus response system, or should we set up some kind of society that acknowledges that we've got this amazing thing going on in our mind and our brain that, to me, has a high spiritual aspect to it, to say, or do we set this up in a way that encourages the growth of the human species, the enlightenment, so to speak, and whatever that might mean to you or anybody listening. But to me, the enlightenment of saying, I don't know what's possible, but I think we can set up something a little bit better so people aren't concerned and worried about money their whole life.
Yeah.
And not that they don't go out there and work and produce and add value, but to not have a debt-based system, maybe, where it's constantly in debt and you're worrying about how you're going to pay it. Corporations pay it. So how if you just start to consider and say, we're bringing in forms, spiritual forms, into bodies, how could we best set it up for them? And that is, it completely changed the where I'm at now in the United States, because I love the system and I love the way it's set up. But there's a lot of faults in it But when I consider the idea of being been brought into this world optimally, how can I optimally bring in the next? How can we as a group say, look, if we sat down and said we're going to basically write rules for our society based on what we want to do with the kids? What's the optimal way? What don't we want? What way would things could we maybe create? And maybe it's just really idealistic. Whether it happens or not, the consideration of it shifted something in me. The consideration shifts something in me where I'm not so attached to the present system, and I'm open.
Yeah.
Space. No more space. I'm holding space.
Yes.
To consider, how can I be a part of that? How can I be used for that? And maybe be guided and say, this is my part in helping that happen.
Yeah, because we're being stuck in fear, aren't we? We're all being constrained by fear, shutting us down. And do you think whether it's government agencies, whether it's medical companies, whether it's the people with the power, do you think they fear this spirit lighting up the world, and then they become redundant?
Well, here's what I think. I think that if you master the fear paradigm, if you master the fear game, and you're on top of the hill, you want to stay there.
Yes.
It's not very pleasant if you're not on top of it, or if you're near the top, or you're on top. You can make it work, but not everybody can be on top, and so it works for a few. And I think that. Yes, they have. We're talking about with the therapist. It's 2 years for phobia cure, and it's going to be this much a week, and you're coming this many times a week, and I can count on you. And then hopefully after a couple of years, this will happen. So you set up it based on fear, a system that's based on fear, that's based on the lower parts of the brain, and it's working for a lot of people. It's working for some. It's not working for others, but for a lot of people, smart people, it's working pretty well. And so their brain, like with the hypnosis, taking the shoe and the sock off, the idea of thinking about doing it something different, they've got a lot to lose. Sorry, that cognitive dissonant part of the brain is going to kick in and give all kinds of reasons about how it's not going to work and why it's not going to work and why they should stay where they're at. So there's competing motivations and values going on for it. And I think that there's probably some that know this and that directly say, no, I want to keep it. I want to keep my kingdom, so to speak. And I think that other people don't necessarily want to, but their fears and fear mechanisms that they're on top of the heap, and the investment. I went to college for all these years and I invested in this business for all these years. They have an investment in that power, just to give up.
Yes,
that's when we're doing work with people. I mean, I think about the stuff that I go back to family members, my mother or my grandmother, or different things. And I mean, I have years and years of investment of being upset at them about certain things.
Yes.
You asked me to let that go.
No way.
Screw you. I exist. I exist because of that. You take that away, I am not going to exist. I'm going to give you 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't let this go.
Yes.
Or somebody that maybe, and you're going like, well, that person died 10 years ago. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah, well, I've made sure that he's still in your mind or she's still in your mind and the threat is in your mind. And so I need to be here to protect you against that threat. Same thing happens on a external level. I think similar to what happens on the internal level.
Yes.
Answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I mean, I heard a stat the other day. Something like 85 people have a wealth equivalent to 3.5 billion people. And the 85 are obviously motivated to keep that power, else they're no one. They'll lose their identity, they'll lose their power. But the spirit, love, is the highest form of energy. So they're going to lose eventually, aren't they?
Well, I'm kind of like back and forth on that because the realization, that the richest 85 people have an accumulated wealth more than the bottom 3.5 billion, or half of the Earth's population, is pretty powerful. But in a sense, think about this, and this is where I go back and forth. In a way, that's lack thinking.
Yes.
That's lack thinking. That the thinking is, and I'm not saying that the 85 don't work real hard to set it up to make sure that they're the 85 and stay the 85 and stay the rich, richer than half the world's population. But in a sense, that thought, that argument locks you into lack, because in a sense it's like, okay, they made that money however they made it and they accumulated it that way. But if there's a limited system, if there's a limited pie, then maybe that there is a little bit of a say, hey, how do we equalize this out? How do we balance this out? But if we look at it and say, well, what if we could add more value to the earth in general, to the earth at whole? I mean, you think about computers.
Yeah.
The mid part of last century, they didn't exist. Look at the economies that are in existence, wealth and the value that's added through computers right now. That's not to say that there's not all kinds of different ways to add value to make 85 more people or 185,000 more people just as rich as them.
Yes.
So in a sense, the argument is, that seems out of line. Really, we should do something about that, equalize it a little bit, distribute it, share the wealth, all that. But then there's another part of me that goes, no, wait a minute, that works only in a closed system.
Yes. Like if the 85 didn't share the wealth, but they shared the ideas and the concepts and the ways to generate the income to the other 3.5 billion, maybe it would lead to a better world.
Let's just pull out of that whole thing for a minute. Let's just pull out and say me and you and some other people, we go to another planet just like Earth, and they're already there. Those people aren't there. They don't control now. The 85 don't control half the world's population. There's no money there. There's no wealth there, so to speak, other than what you create and what you value. And it's kind of like, what do we do then? The argument doesn't exist anymore.
No.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes, definitely.
But what I'm saying is, now bring that back and apply that to Earth. There's still plenty of resources here. There's still a lot of people willing to work. So if you have an idea,
yes,
that you have an opportunity, regardless of those 85. I'm saying, hey, if human beings are that rich and stay that rich, and still people continue to add value and get wealth and become as wealthy as them, God bless them. It doesn't. Why should I let that affect for me?
Yes, definitely so.
You get what I just did there?
Yes. Yes. Definitely. It's like a sand bunker. If I'm focused on the sand bunker when I'm hitting the shot, I'm gonna put it in the bunker. Yes. But if I look at that flag and the bunker's not a problem, I get the ball in the hole. That's great.
We were thinking about golf, and you're talking about the bunker, just for those that don't play golf. So I mean, if you're on one side of the sand bunker and you can barely see the flag or can't see the flag, and you got to get over it, and it's going to be almost impossible to get over it or get out of it if you're in it, and you start to say, who built this sand bunker, and this is crazy, and you just get yourself into this big worked up mess.
Yes.
Some other guys over there that hit the ball on the green and are watching you going like, why is he blaming all these other people for being in that hole? For the bunker. Come out here and play. There's plenty of room to play. There's all kinds of other room to, but this is the nefarious, tricky way that we get stuck.
Yeah.
It's stuck because we think about a limited pie. We get into the argument. The I gets us into the argument. The I keeps us in. And the solutions, now this is really key. The solutions that you come up with is to say, maybe we could get the 85 to talk to us a little bit. Maybe we get the 85 to share. Maybe we could tax those 85 a little bit. So maybe I can get out of the bunker. Maybe I can use a sand wedge to get out of the bunker. Maybe if nobody's looking, I can throw the ball out of the bunker. We're focused on the bunker.
Yes. Focus.
Instead of pulling out and saying, wait a minute, let's just let the 85 do what they're doing. How does that interfere with what I'm doing? But we get caught. That's how we get caught into the limbic system. And then all the solutions, the I comes up with not only the problem, the I comes up with the solution.
Yes.
Then triggers the problem, which then triggers the solution, which then triggers the problem. What they say, Wadslowick, Fish, and Wheatland, I think it was in their book Change, which is one of the absolute best books. If you haven't read it, go get it. If you're in therapy or change work, the book Change. The premise of the book is the solution to the problem is the problem, or the solution to the problem becomes the problem. So the bunker, the 85, we've defined the problem. Let's go back to the parts defining. We define the problem as the 85.
Yes.
And now we need to come up with solutions for the 85. And all the stuff creates upset. Look at them. They're all the wealth, and they've got it, and they're keeping other people. Now we're upset.
Yes.
Here's the solution. We ought to tax them. We ought to, maybe take them and put them all in jail and you come up, and it's kind of like, well, you're in the bunker, man. There's a whole golf course with all kinds of bunkers and greens and tees and beautiful trees and everything else. Why do you want to stay there? It's that I now has created a life for itself.
Yes.
Continue to exist, and it continues to exist only by the emotion that it gets from you by considering the 85 and how terrible and nasty they are and how unfair that is. And that part goes, yeah, just keep feeling that feeling. That's the food that keeps me alive.
Yes, definitely. You're stuck in the I's definition of the solution.
Correct. Solution is the dog, don't give up this bone because there's nothing better out there. That's all you got. There's no meat left on it. There's still just a little bit of flavor maybe coming out of that bone, and if I can bite into it, I might get a little bit more. But there's not that the eye doesn't even consider or let you consider, gives you amnesia for the fact that there's a big steak over there.
Yeah.
You'll just let that go.
Yes. If you keep focusing on the 85, it's never going to change.
It's never going to change. Never going to change. I mean, that the 85 have figured out a way to do what they're doing. There's nothing stopping you from figuring out a different way or copying them.
Yes.
Or something brand new or moving to another country and living in a different way. I mean, the options are endless.
Yes, definitely. So do you think this world will ever become 100% spiritual thinking, where the lower levels become so obsolete it's not even worth going there?
Will it? I don't know. I think the hope is that, if we just start with getting more into the higher brain function, start having, integrity, and integrity not, people think integrity, yes, I've got integrity. Well, basically integrity as it's being defined from some people that I learned from now is basically keeping your word and if you say you're going to do something, a lot of issues and problems are defined through NLP terms is called sequential incongruity. And sequential incongruity means over time, you're at a party. Hey, let's get together next Friday and do this, this, and this, and we'll part. And you're feeling great, and you're doing, yeah, let's do it. Put it on the schedule. Let's bump phones and put that into the calendar. And then Tuesday comes along, and you're going, oh shit, I don't want to go see. What was I thinking? Oh, Dad, you change your feelings, and then Thursday you're saying, oh man, I'm not feeling well. I'm still sick from the weekend. I'm not going to be able to make it. And the other guy goes, oh, I'm so glad you called. I'm not going to be able to make it either. And you realize, wow, he's thinking the same thing. He didn't want to get together with me any more than I wanted to get together with him. And over time, you're incongruous. There's an incongruity about what you say you're going to do compared to what you're going to do.
Yes.
And integrity aspect of it is to decide that you're not going to be able to do it. You try not to. They had one of my spiritual teachers over at my house in Texas when I lived in Austin, and I got a phone call from this girl while he was there, and she starts talking to me, and she starts going into all these problems and wanting me to do like a therapy session without doing a therapy session, and I just was done talking to her, and he was there in the room. Listening to me, and he had his glasses on, and every once in a while I'd say something, and he kind of like give him, like looking over the top of his glasses, like, did you really just say that to her? Are you really not going to be honest? So finally I said, well, look, I said, I've got my friend Jerry here, and I need to go. And he goes, do not blame me for this. Blame me for this. Tell her the truth. I said, Lisa, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm done talking to you. And I don't, he goes, there you go. So it was hard, but he's right there, and he's saying it out loud. Do not put this on me. You don't want to talk to her. You do want to talk to her. So I think that the sense of being honest to say, look, I made a promise to you last Friday. The more I think about it in this week, I'm going to be there. I don't want to be there necessarily, but I'm going to be there. Or I've changed my mind, and I'm going to let you know as soon as possible. I'm not going to wait till Thursday. I'm going to call you the next day, and whether I'm feeling good or not, say, hey, look, you know what? What we talked about last night, I really don't want to do that. I don't feel like that's in my best interest or something I want to do. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to keep my word. Either I'm going to meet you there, or I'm going to keep my word to let you know as soon as possible that I'm not going to be keeping my word. Foundational pieces right there. If we start putting that, and people just grew up and said, is like one of those things where I said, what kind of world do we want to bring people into? I like that as a start for what integrity is. We keep our words. And if we don't keep our words, we let the person know immediately in no uncertain terms. And if they ask us, and just say, well, I thought about it. I just don't feel comfortable spending that time with you or meeting with you. I don't think it's good for me, and I don't want to do it. Instead of saying, well, I got this to do and I got that to do. No. Let's start off with integrity. Let's start off with telling our best truth and keeping our word.
Yeah. Stay in the line or not stay in the line.
All of us becoming spiritual and everything, I think the first thing is out there, it would be a nice goal, something to look forward to. In reality, it's like, okay, what's the next small step that I could take? And then I can begin to practice within me. Change starts with me. I want it to start with other people. I want my wife to do this first. I want my little girl to do this. I'd rather have you do it first, Philip. But if I'm going to be responsible and I'm going to have integrity, then I've got to say, wait a minute, no, it starts with me first. I got to go first.
Yes, definitely so. Can I ask about, we're talking about present moment and goals. So if we stand in that present moment, the spirit knows what to do, right? Is there any need to have goals if we're going to trust the spirit?
Well, I think it's an exercise in data. I think it's I don't think there's a right and wrong with this. I think that you play with it and you watch yourself and you say, well, why do I really want this goal? What is the want? What is the want, and why am I setting this goal? And kind of do some searching on that and find out what is that from. If you're in the present moment, they say, spiritually you should be satisfied, you should be in the present and everything. But you know what? I've got preferences, and I don't want to have to analyze all those preferences. Sometimes I want what I want just because I want it, and I don't want to have to make up any reasoning or anything else like that. I want this, and I want it, and then I'm going to plan for it. And you go along and you discover what you discover. It's a learning process, and I think you get the data to say, okay, is this something that I want because I'm trying to get away from something, or is there an I that's in there that really wants it bad? Is this going to perpetually bring to, like, somebody that wants that's an alcoholic and wants a drink? When they stop drinking, that want doesn't go away. Sometimes 20 years later, they still have that. And is that want a goal that you want to set, or is that coming out of something that's going to be destructive for you? And I think you have to make determinations to say, is this useful? Is this good for me? Okay, I ate the wrong thing. I wanted a donut, and I went and got a donut. And then say, okay, now the donut craving is satisfied. I don't want a donut now, but you know what? Just like with the drinking, next week, all of a sudden, I'm wanting a donut again. It's like, well, geez, I thought I was going to take care of that last week. So what? And where does that want come from? So what I'm saying is, don't deny yourself, but also do your best to stay awake in the process of to say all the wants that I've wanted in my life. I'm just 54, and all the wants that I want in my life, I look back and so many of them I don't want anymore. But boy, I thought that I absolutely had to have them, and they were the biggest things in the world. And now it's like the idea of the wanting, setting the goals, and as opposed to maintenance. Let's say I want a new battery for my car. Do I want a new battery just because I want the newest, grooviest new battery that's coming up and it's on sale at Walmart or Sears or something? Or my battery and the mechanic said, your battery's starting to go. All right, let me set a goal. Necessity. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need a new battery. Let me save up a little bit of money and plan on going and getting another battery. So you start to put it into a category. You want to go on vacation somewhere. I just want to get away. Well, I've been here a long period. I want to travel. It does have to be a reason. No, this one feels like I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to plan the vacation and set a goal and go on a cruise and enjoy it. Bring my wife and kids and go on a cruise and enjoy it. See what happens. Monitor yourself throughout the process. By the time you get off the cruise, you might go, why did I want to do that? That was the craziest thing I ever did. I never want another cruise again. And you start to know yourself a little bit better. So what I'm saying is it's not like a right or a wrong. I think if you're wanting it out of an addiction, you start to recognize it. If you want necessity, you have to have it. It's another thing. But in the process, whatever you do, if you can kind of have a bird's eye view, a meta view of finding out a little bit about who you are in the process, that to me is the important thing. So that would be a goal that I would set. I think that would be fun to say. No matter what I do, I do. However, I just got a little bit of an insight into why I wanted that and what made it. Where did that drive come from? Found out a little bit more about me. So you might have a great vacation, enjoy the cruise, and find out about yourself and come. Either way, to me, the bigger goal on top of it is I just found out something really interesting about myself.
Yes. Because you can't go from little I to spirit, A to Z, in a flash. It takes all those little I's to get to the Z. And in each moment, as those eyes are developing, wants are occurring, goals are occurring, outcomes are occurring. So whatever appears in that particular moment, and going back to consistency and alignment. So if you want to go on your holiday, you stick with it. And what do I find out on the way?
Yeah. Well, let's take something where you talked about A to Z, A to Z. So if you look by finding out about who you are, the foundation of who you are, what are the value systems and what are the beliefs that you've built the foundation on? You build different size foundations and different depths into the ground of a building based on how high that building is going to be. And a lot of times what we do is we build on top of ideas without considering how high we want to go. And if we want to go 20 stories high and the value system of the base of the beliefs, the thing starts crumbling after 8 stories and it starts falling apart and you get upset and you get angry and everything. It's not that the stuff on floors 1 through 8 is bad, but based on the initial foundation of your values and something that might be back there in your past, the foundation just doesn't support it. And then you can pull back and start to look at it and say, okay, I'm building it on these values, but it's falling apart at this level. What kind of values and beliefs do I need to implement to get to 20 stories? You see a lot of people, let's say with the talk about the 85 or that are poor and that are addicted and they're upset all the time and they're just not getting anywhere in life and they complain a lot and everything. But you go back into their belief systems and find that they've got some basic beliefs and values that are not going to allow that to happen for them because, if it gets to a certain level, certain eyes are going to make sure that thing falls apart. So we've got eyes that are built upon other eyes. And, if you're getting an 8-story building, that might say that based on the initial values, the values that you built from the foundation, because the foundation was weak, all the other values and floors and eyes that you've built are also weak. And it can't sustain your growth to a level higher than that. And I think that it's the sense of now, do we defend that and say, well, that's just who I am. That's just the way I was raised. That's just my genetics. That's just whatever. And there's nothing I can do about it. And God's really given me a bad lot in life, blah, blah, blah. Or do we realize that, okay, there's some of that stuff was put in there and this is my genetics and this is the way I look and, but what belief system back down in the foundation can make that work for me to build higher? Or do I just default and say, there's nothing I can do about it? And sometimes that's okay, just to default and say, I'm going to learn to accept where I'm at life and not try to push it and build it and really enjoy the height that I can attain. And that might be a whole nother value that allows you to live an easy life. Maybe not easy as a rich person or somebody's got a lot of money can do what they want, which a lot of times we think wealthy have it easy, but I can tell you sometimes they much more stress in their life than we do, but an easier life because you're taking it easy on yourself. You're living an easier life because you're taking it easy. You're not putting the pressure on you. You're not coming up with all these reasons and excuses of why you're doing this or why you're doing that or why things are falling apart or whatever. You start to now search and find and say, well, what can I do about it? What's possible? What belief could I change? What am I holding on to that's making the meaning so heavy? That's holding me down. What can I change that? Well, I'm pretty committed to that, and I've got a lot invested, and I've learned that lesson many, many times. Does everybody believe that way? No. Other people, well, why don't you try believe? God, I want to. It doesn't feel right. There's that stubbornness, that resistance. Study that resistance. Why do you constantly say no? Why do you want to defend it? Why don't you just try it in another way and see what happens? Try another ion from spiritual realm, let's say, spiritual value system. and see what happens.
Mm.
And if people can do that, and I'm not saying it's easy, it can be difficult. It gets easier as you do it. It gets a lot easier as you do it. But if they can begin to do it even for the first time, they'll get the aha moments. Those are those big reliefs of, like, when family members have been at each other's throats for years, and finally one of them comes up and shakes and or hugs them and says, "I'm really sorry. I miss your friendship." And they both get upset and start crying and let it go. "I'm sorry too, and please forgive." And all of a sudden, they've enacted a couple spiritual principles, and now their base is supported differently. It goes right down to the foundation, and they're able to build higher.
Mm.
They were where they were, and they could only go that far, both of them. But then they applied some spiritual principles and of forgiveness, love, humility, saying I'm sorry, whatever it is. And all of a sudden now they're able to go to another height. It was not easy.
Mm.
Not easy, but once it's passed, what do you hear people like that say a lot of times? Like what we talked about with the therapy earlier. They'll go, "Gosh, that feels so good. Why didn't we do that earlier? Why were we mad at each other? What were we? Yeah, why were we? What's happened there?"
Mm.
And there's something really powerful that keeps you from doing that. I don't know why, but most of the time that I've seen, whether it's through the work or hearing stories of people, reconciliation and forgiveness and love, you're usually pretty wonderful stories.
Mm.
Heart that opens you up, doesn't close you down. It opens you up and improves your life.
Mm. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So how are we doing question-wise?
Got a couple of more, if that's okay.
Yep, let's do that. I've got a coaching call. I've got to get on here pretty quick, but let's go ahead and keep going.
Okay. So
drink while you're asking the question. I'm going to take a drink of water.
Okay. All these eyes, do they have a source? Is there an eye creating all these eyes, or is it just consciousness and entertainment? Or...
So you said something in the beginning. Something dies. What did you say died?
Oh, I just said all these eyes. Is there a source to all these eyes? Where do all these eyes come from?
Where do all the eyes come from?
Is it one eye creating many eyes? Is there a source to eyes?
Are
they like characters in a film?
I think it's one eye. I like to, what's coming up for me now is going back to like the story of the Garden of Eden in the Bible.
Okay.
And that everything was perfect, but then something came in and separated man and woman from God.
Yes.
And that was the first eye. So let's use that as a metaphor. Whether people believe it or not, we'll use it as a metaphor to say that there was a wholeness.
Yes.
That split into a dichotomy.
Yes.
And it was kind of like God says, don't eat from that tree. But yet there was a snake there that put words into, it was an eye that came in and did its best to try to break up and create another eye.
Yes.
So and then the source of that. But what was it that happened? And most eyes are formed still to this day. All the eyes are formed the same way. That the snake put doubt in the woman's ear. God said, "Don't do this, or surely you will die." And the snake says, "No, you're not going to die. Don't worry. Yeah, just take a bite, and you'll see that you're not going to die." And this goes back to your short-term, long-term thing. And so finally the woman goes, "Yeah, God's doing this. Yeah, let's take a bite." She takes a bite. And he goes, "See, you didn't die." Well, she began the process of dying, but she didn't see it right then. So she didn't realize the consequences of it. So in the time and I'm kind of going off the cuff right here. At the time that she bites that, she does die. There's now a separation, and then there's going to be an end to what has separated. There's a beginning to it. There's an end to it. Before it was like I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end in one. But now we separated off into the dichotomy. And if you think about it, what are eyes? Eyes are continuous doubts of something, separate off, form another eye. And when your kids do it, what's the first thing? You got a real good connection. The kids believe you, they love you, they trust you. Next thing you know, the neighbor kid, you tell the kid, don't go on the road because you'll get hit by a car maybe, or stay away from there's the cars there. And then the neighbor kid takes your kid out into the road, and your kid comes back and says, you're a liar. What do you mean? The neighbor kid took me out in the road and I didn't get hit by a car. No, you didn't. But there's some cars that you may end up getting hit by if I don't believe you anymore. Well, now there was a doubt put in there. There was another experience of another eye. And now that eye begins to develop its own reasoning separate from the original. And you can feel as a parent, you go, wow, the child, or let's take another example. Maybe a kid gets older as a teenager and the kid goes off, starts taking drugs. Kid convinces them and says, don't listen to it. These are great. Just try them. You're going to feel fantastic. And the kid feels fantastic and goes, you lied to me, said drugs were bad. Well, what if the kid just doesn't tell you and decides to keep it secret? And you feel this distance all of a sudden from the kid, the child. And he has now aligned himself with his friend because his friend is the one that convinced him to doubt. And then the experience with his friend was they did it, and they didn't get the bad experience that you had said they were going to get. And now the kid has aligned with his friend or the neighbor kid, and you start to feel the separation. And now there's a dichotomy. There wasn't that before, but now there's a separation. And I think internally, if we go internally, and again, this is just off the cuff theory of what's happening, that we have certain belief systems that we start off with, and then our parents put certain ideas in our heads, and then the teachers tell us something that maybe contradicts that, and we start to doubt it, and then we start to separate, and we have different beliefs and things that come up with it, different values that come up with it, and then multiply that out 1,000,000 times, and you start to have the separation based on doubt.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but that's...
No, that's cool. Yeah, and... which one should we go with? I guess we all have beliefs. Okay, and
yeah.
Would you say beliefs are real? Are they true? Or are they just concepts, ideas pasted on to reality? And if we got rid of these beliefs, what would happen to the world? Would it be spirit? Would it be... What is the world without beliefs, I guess?
Well, I kind of go back to, let's take the people, let's say that the relatives that hadn't talked for a long period of time. And they had certain beliefs about each other, certain beliefs about why they're not going to forgive, why they're going to continue to hold it against the other person. They've got a big investment, long-term investment. They've cultivated all kinds of reasons and ideas about why this is on both sides. And then there's a deadlock. Nothing's happening. But somebody takes a step forward for whatever reason and decides to go counterintuitive to that belief and let it go. And the other person begins to let it go as well. And I'm not saying it happens in every case, but let's say with this one, they get to the point like, why were we even mad at each other? Do you even remember? No, not really. So what happened to that belief? What happened to those previous beliefs? And what did they do? Did they enter into a new belief system or a knowledge system? Because you got beliefs and you got knowledge systems. They used to say it, a knowledge system is I think it's the Greek word pisteo. Pisteo. So to use a bridge, if you go up to a bridge and you walk up to a bridge and you look at the architecture of it and the underlying of it and you say, you know what? I believe that bridge will not only hold me, but it'll hold a car, might even hold a tank going across it. And then you turn around and you walk away. That's not pisteo. That's not knowing. So you got a belief that goes into knowing where you go, okay, I'm actually going to test it, walk out there, jump up and down. Then I'm going to drive my car across it and sit on it. Now your belief is kind of go more into a knowledge system. And what I think is a lot of people have beliefs, but they're untested. They're idealistic. And again, I think we need to get more into a knowledge system. So there's a lot of belief systems, and belief systems change, and people can change them, and they can grow them or they can make them less. But I would say, what if you test your beliefs without, if I went and did that, if I built that bridge, I've got an investment in it. But if somebody else built it and then somebody said, look, will you go out and test that bridge and see if it's a viable bridge? And go look at it, look at the undersiding. And I go, basically it looks pretty good. When I walked across and jumped up and down, it was all right. When I drove across it, I heard a little creaking, and then I got back under there and I see some cracks in the, whereas if I built the bridge, I might not tell you about the cracks and the creaking. No, it'll hold up. It'll hold your car, and it'll hold, because I've got an investment in that belief. But if I go and I just look at it as data, sheer data, I don't have an investment in the data. Now my belief system going into a knowledge system is based on data, not on whether I feel like it should be that way or I don't feel like it should be that way. So are your feelings going towards that, or are you looking at it logically? And again, obviously feelings can change and make things and improve things or make things worse. But in a sense, if you look at process and how we use process and information, we pull away from just a sheer belief system, and then we get into knowledge system. So I'm thinking, back to your question, it's a belief system until it becomes a knowledge system, becomes a knowing system. And you still have to be open to that changing as well. But I think that there's always going to be something there. I think we're creatures of beliefs, creatures of knowledge. It's never going to go away. But once one goes away, the new belief system, those family members that didn't used to like each other, now that like each other again, they have a belief system like, wow, she really is okay. This feels good, and I can't wait to catch up with them, and they're really not that bad of a person. And all of a sudden now the belief system changes the direction of the reasoning and the excuses and the meaning, and then they change the feeling that you have in your body. So if we're going to always have belief systems and we're going to always have knowledge systems, what are the ones that are going to open us up, or what are the ones that are going to close us down? And if we're closed down and we're tight on some, what do we need to do to open it up and to shift it and change it? I mean, who cares? At that point, it gets back to the first phone call of, is it constricting you, or is it opening you up and making you feel better? There's a party that's want to defend it and be right or wrong about that belief system. But if they're going to be in there, let's manage them in a way that they're lighter in our body.
Yes.
And then a knowledge system that we have is, those engineers that learned to build bridges over the years, they tested different designs and saw them over time. And there's certain bridges that we know, like if you're going to build a bridge this long for this purpose, you got to build it out of this material and at this strength. And now it's like, well, do you believe that? No, I know that. I know that. So it can default into a knowledge system if you practice it enough, and if you look at the data without being too emotionally committed to or committed at all to the belief systems that are intact.
Yeah, I guess it's are you using the belief to constrict or expand?
Yeah. Does it feel good in your body or does it feel bad? Does it feel tight in your body or does it feel open in your body? I mean, ultimately, as the older I get and the more I realize it's just like, why am I doing coaching for myself and other people? It's just for relief. For relief for all the belief systems in the eyes that I created that caused me to be tight and constricted.
Yes.
And now it's a process of unpacking it to say, I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old boy, and I'm realizing that's interfering. That's in the way of what I want to give to them. And so I look at it as my job to start to unpack and say, the ones that are tight, why am I committed to this? And what do I have to do to loosen them up and open them up and not be so committed to it? You get to a point where time-wise, how much time do you have left? Nobody ever knows. And how much do you love this person? And do you want to practice love more than the other? I think when you're young and full of piss and vinegar and testosterone and estrogen and all that stuff there, that I want to keep this, roll, and then after a while, it's like wow, I don't know if I want to keep doing this anymore. I'm not having fun with this anymore. This is not fun. This is not fun. What's going to be fun? How do I loosen this up? And instead of defending it, which a lot of people do, it's just the way I am. That's the way I grew up. I'm too old to change now. I can't teach old dog new tricks and blah, 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 all that stuff. And I say BS. I say you can always start again every day.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Thank you for your time, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, Philip. I appreciate you writing the letter. I don't know how closely we followed the questions on the email. Hopefully, though, knowing what you were looking for and the kind of the direction, I told a lot of stories and talked about a lot of things that hopefully circled around and covered those questions without you having to really go in and ask them.
Yeah. Well, I just went with the flow.
Yeah. And if there's more and there's something that's still pressing that you don't feel like you feel like you want to know more of, I don't know if I can answer them or not. But like we did on this call, I'll do my best. And sometimes I'm going to wing it and not know where I'm going and just start talking like I did several times. And I'm hoping you get some kind of meaning or some kind of understanding that benefits you and opens you up and makes your life easier along with the people listening to the call.
I'm sure it will. Well, all the best for Monday.
Thank you.
And be well.
You be well too. And thanks for staying up so late and staying with me, and keep in touch. Let me know how this goes. I'll edit this up. There's not much to edit. I'll probably edit a little bit in the beginning and then put it up, and we'll send it out to people. So you'll be able to go through and listen to it again if you'd like.
Okay, Mark. You take care.
You too, Philip. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.